How we doing, everyone? It's Odin here from the custom shop at Tactical Edge Hobbies Geebung, and with the release of our new WeTech 1911 gas blowback pistols comes a new tech talk to show you how to maintain your 1911 in the best condition possible. Okay, so here on the tech bench today we've grabbed a standard 1911 original. So this is WeTech, of course, and we're doing a video on 1911. So we'll now have one on our high cappers, one on our Glocks, and one on our 1911. So whichever pistols you have, please watch those videos. But this will give you an understanding of how to maintain your 1911. Now, the major differences between the 1911s and the 2011s is pretty much around here in the recoil plug area. So on our 1911s, as you can see, we've got a plug and a rotating barrel bushing there. On our 2011s, sorry, it's a reverse recoil system. So this is one of the few exceptions. This is a WeTech 1911 short version, the original in the short, and as you can see in the front here, it's very much the same as a capper, where you can see the spring guide poking out the front here, and you have no barrel bushing there. So that's the major differences. We'll get into what that means as far as maintenance when we pull our full size one apart, but I just wanted to grab the smaller one as well to show you that on all of the 1911s except this one, they are going to be the same as this. So with that said, mag out of course, and we'll take the slide off. So exactly the same as you would on the high cappers. You can either push in on this button here using a tool, or as I like to do, poke your finger through the ejection port and wiggle that so it comes up, and then just pull your slide catch out, and we'll set that to the side. Now, there we have our lower. For all intensive purposes, pretty much everything back here is exactly the same as a high capper. The trigger hoops are a little bit different, obviously, as you have a single stack magazine on our 1911s versus the dual stack that the high cappers run. But other than that, the mechanics down inside here are very much the same, and the lubrication requirements as far as the rails are pretty much the same as well. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to show you the difference between a 1911 and a high capper, and I'll use our original short to show you that, as it's set up the same way as a high capper would. So if I remove the slide on the original short, exactly the same way, and set that off to the side. So you can see here, this is the difference, and it's on our recoil springs. So the 1911 originally by design does have this short little recoil rod, and when you have that pistol together and you shake it, you will actually hear a rattle, and what that is it's this wiggling around like that. Now, it is supposed to be like that. It is by design. They changed the design in the standard for the 2011s, and it is also an optional upgrade in Real Steel World that you can do to your 1911, and for whatever reason WeTech have chosen, that's what they're running here. So the only real difference between the 1911 original short and the rest of the 1911s is to pull the spring out, you're going to have to pull the spring retainer out like you would on a high capper. So by pulling that retainer back, and that's your spring on the short ones, exactly the same as it is on a high capper, and then your barrel just comes out the front. Other than that, we're going to continue on with our 1911 full length 5.1 original. So we have our pistol, and we have, there we go, shows you how easy they do come out once it's disassembled, so that's already up. We have our, as always, recommended synthetic grease with a PTFE in it is my preference. So you can use something like the Super Lube here, which is quite good. We've used it for a long period of time. My personal preference, which anyone who's been in store and spoken to me will know, is for battle-born break-free with PTFE in it. It's very, very, very much the same as the Super Lube. The only difference being is this one is a fair bit more waxy like, so it is still a grease, but it's not as runny as something like the Super Lube. So I do prefer the thicker one just because it stays where you put it, And in terms of if you were to be asking someone like a nut and bolt shop or a bearing shop or any spare parts store really, you're looking for at a minimum a synthetic grease, and you want an NGL2 grade. So the grades explain, the NGL grade is essentially how thick it is. So this doesn't have an NGL grade, but it would be about a 3, maybe a 4, whereas the Super Lube is a 2. It works completely fine. I just use this because I happened to have this from my Real Steel times, so I use that. But for the video and for ease of purchase, we're going to use Super Lube. So we grab our lube and we grab our paintbrush. Now I've cut the bristles off this one to make it a bit stiffer, just so we've got a little bit more control over where I'm putting the lube. And as I explained in the previous videos, essentially what you're looking for, and these ones don't have any wear on them as they're brand new, you're looking for areas that you're going to find the wear. So common places are always going to be on these rails, particularly on the front corners, and any high spots on here. So that's where you're going to find your wear, and the first sign of that will be that this black coating comes off and you've got a bit of silver. Now don't worry if you've got a bit of silver, that's completely fine. What we're trying to do is to stop that little bit of silver turning into you've worn a rail away. That's the idea of this maintenance. And then in here it will be the same again. We're going to make sure we get the grease in the rails. So as far as the 1911, you saw how easy that fell out on me as I was fidgeting around with it on the bench. So it literally just sits in there like so. And this barrel bushing, there is a pro tip there that I will show you about this barrel bushing, the recoil bushing, as we put it back together. But for now, so all we do is just take the spring guide out, and that brings the spring with it. We set that to the side. Now we take our recoil plug out, and then we grab our barrel bushing here and we rotate it just a little bit. And forgive me if I've done that, which I have, I've done that the wrong way. So if you were to be looking at that, you want to go counterclockwise. So grab your barrel bushing, turn it counterclockwise. Once you get to there, just give it a bit of a wiggle and that will come out. So we set that to the side. And from that point, just give your barrel a bit of a wiggle and a shove, and that'll come out the front. Same as the high capper. So the only difference there is in the 1911s, we need to rotate this barrel bushing out of position and remove that, because on the 1911s we don't have that because the barrel actually flares up by design. So that's the other minor difference between the 1911s and the 2011s. So in that same note, if you're ever looking at aftermarket outer barrels for your pistol, a 1911 will be straight and a 2011/high capper will be slightly flared. Let me demonstrate that with a little 4.3 one here, because as it has the reverse recoil lug assembly in there, it can operate like a capper. But, so this is what I mean when I say it's flared. So you can see there that they start off the same, but the one that doesn't have the barrel bushing flares significantly to take up the place of what would be the barrel bushing, and our 1911 continues along straight. So with that said, we can put that aside and we can lubricate our pistol. So paintbrush, shorten bristles, a little bit of grease, and as I mentioned previously, I don't recommend oil for these areas because oil is designed to continuously flow. That's why it's an oil. A grease by definition is okay, mostly. There is some very minor exceptions, nothing that applies to gel ball. Grease is an oil with a thickener in it that's designed to help it stay in place and reduce the wear. So in this case we're using a PTFE thickener, so it's still essentially a silicone oil with PTFE added, so it's a thicker oil and it stays where we put it, and instead of the metal wearing away, the PTFE actually wears away. So this is why we need to, once every 20 or so mags, pull it apart, give it a wipe out with a microfiber cloth and reapply our grease, because our grease wears out and our pistol doesn't. So that's why it's important to use a good quality grease with some sort of lubrication modifier in it, such as PTFE, in order to stop any other wear from happening, because wear is going to happen. The name of the game is to control how that wear happens. So by using a grease with a thickener in it, we're saying wear the grease away because that's the easiest thing to wear, and we're going to replace that instead of our metal. So we grab our pistol with our brush, I haven't wiped this one down. There's just a very, very fine coat of grease that they do put in the factory from WeTech. So I'm not going to worry about removing that. It hasn't been shot. There's no build-up of gunk, grime, and what you'll get is it comes off as like a black grease when it gets old, and that's because you get bits of metal in this coating wearing away. So same as we did on our Kappas and our Glocks, just a little bit will do. Paint it on, and as I've explained, you don't need to be this delicate with it. I am this delicate because it's just what I do. But yeah, I paint it in, make sure I get a nice bit of grease all the way underneath the rails. Just need a touch more. Like that. Yeah, that's done. You'll see that, a little bit of excess there, but you'll see I've just got a nice even coat, relatively even if I pay a bit more attention, nice even coat over our rails where our wear is going to happen. And I've paid particular attention to the underside of the rails as well, because wear absolutely happens under these rails. It's usually overlooked because it's not somewhere that you notice, but a lot of wear happens underneath these rails, so it's just as important to get on the underside as it is to get on the top side. We've got our slide with our barrel removed, so we can now get into these rails down inside here that run the full length. You've got one on each side. You get a bit of grease, and I generally just get a bit in the start there. I'll grab a bit more now, and that there will be enough for one side. And I'll flick a bit onto the other side while I'm at it. And then we just want to paint it in and spread it along. Alright, just like that. And that's done. Now, it's up to you. You can just put a little bit of grease on this spring. It's certainly not going to do it any harm. I wouldn't cake it, whatever you do, because dust will stick to grease, and that's an issue, particularly more so with oil, that we try to avoid. But like, there is a bit of friction that does happen on these rods, so if you have a little bit of grease left over on your brush like I just did, it's a good place to put it. So once we've done that, we quickly put it back together. So I put my barrel through the front, C-tip all the way in, grab my barrel bushing, put that in, and it's sort of, if I look at that, it's probably 4 o'clock on the clock that goes in, and then it just rotates down. So we're looking for a nice round circle there. This is what I was talking about before when I said we'll talk about a pro tip on the 1911s. It's something to watch for. So when you insert the recoil bushing, so that's what this is here, and as you can see, it's blanked off at the end so the rod doesn't come through. However, this face here comes in like so, and you can see there's a gap, right? And now there's not. So what that gap is, and this is what you need to watch for in our 1911s, if I just twist that barrel bush just a little bit, just off center like that, and I push it forward, that's what's giving us our gap. So because the front of this recoil plug is hitting our barrel bushing, it can't come all the way home. Now, if you put your pistol back together like this and you shoot it, it will shoot. However, you're going to need a new barrel bushing, because what happens is it'll actually bend the bottom of that barrel bushing straight out. So it's very important to make sure when your pistol is together that you have that rotated to the correct angle, so the barrel bushing comes all the way in, sits flush, and you'll notice there's no more gap. Now, the reason that is on these, when the recoil spring compresses up like so, if this lip wasn't here, it would be putting all of the load on this barrel bushing. So they put this lip here so it spreads the load through there, and the barrel bushing basically just locates the barrel. So it's more for aesthetics. In the real steel version, this barrel bushing is made out of heavy duty steel, and this actually captures that rod. You actually push that in, rotate the barrel bushing to disassemble it on the real steel versions. So be sure that your bushing is hard up against your slide. If it's not, you're gonna bend, your spring retainer is hard up against the slide, because if it's not, you are gonna make this look like a banana. And when it does, the first thing that'll happen is it'll snap on the underside, Going to be sticking out like that, and you're going to need a new one. And unfortunately, they're not the easiest things to get your hands on at the moment. We are looking for them. We have had, I think we've had maybe 1 or 2 customers who have had that issue so far, but it's all been traced back to this barrel bushing being like that when the pistol was shot, and the pressure, because there's a gap here as that spring's recoiled, has pushed that forward and bent that up. So however, when that is in its correct position, that will pop forward, seated against there, we won't damage that. So let me grab my microfiber cloth. So I've got a bit of grease going everywhere here. Just wipe off any excess that I've got here. Grab our frame, the same here. Microfiber cloths are awesome. So these are a very, very satin finish, and when you get any sort of oil or grease on them, it shows up immediately. However, microfiber has the ability to grab that and pull it off the frame, so it makes them look as good as new. Alright, so that's all cleaned up there. Slide back on. If you get to this point and you've got any resistance, it can be your disconnector there or your firing pin lock. So as you get back, if you've got any resistance, just push that down and it'll click in. Now, when you're assembling it, if you're getting to this point and it feels like it's got something holding it back and it's springing forward, pull it back apart and just make sure that this is as central as you can get it on that, okay? Because this can snag on the rails where it's not designed to snag. It sits in there with this little indent in that channel. If that indent gets snagged here, it won't want to settle for you. On the high cappers, it's very easy to tell because the recoil rod will stick out a little bit. On the 2011s, it's a bit harder to tell, but it's also because we have this amount of free play in our recoil rod, it will fall back in, but that can be something to watch out for. So we drop that back on. And here's a prime example where it's even happened to me. So as I've gone to put it in, it's all gone wrong and it's out of alignment. So prime example, it can happen to anyone. But that happens, we just put it back together, that into there. We have a gap, give it a wiggle. We no longer have a gap. There we go. That was actually a nice easy way of doing it. I might remember that. Just keep it upside down and slide your lower straight on. First time I've done that, but it seemed to work very well. So now that we've got the slide on, we get our half moon lined up. Drop our slide catch back in. Done. Done. So that is the basic maintenance on your WeTech 1911. So with that done, our mags, as I said before, main difference being between our 1911 and our 2011 mags is the 2011 mags are a double stack. I have this is a Armor Works, same company as WeTech, different brand with the Salient Arms base on it, but this gives you an idea of how much thicker. So if you look at the differences there, that's probably an easier comparison. So that's the difference between a 1911 magazine and a 2011/high capper magazine. So these will only hold about 12 to 13 gels. These are up over 20, depends on how good you are at getting the double stack in there. So, but anyway, we'll put that away. And so that one's actually out of my personal pistol. Sorry, just showing off. But so 1911 magazines, they load a little bit differently. So on the side of these ones, you pull that down, and if you actually have a close look, just in here, you can see there's a little detent. So as you bring the follower down, you can push that across and actually lock it into the detent. So you don't need to hold on to the follower there. Then you can drop your gel balls in through there, and I do recommend using a pistol speed loader so you can just quickly drop them in. That'll take 13 if you've got decent gels and you get them in there nicely. It will take 13, and that's about the capacity of the gas for these. So that's another thing to take into account as well. These don't hold anywhere near the amount of gas that a high capper does. They hold a considerably less amount, so it does become a little bit more pertinent that you purge your mags. And when I say purge the mags, that's where we're holding our mag. I'm going to have it on its side here, but you would hold the mag with the output valve facing down, depress that, hold the can in and fill until you get a white cloud coming out the bottom, and then let that go. Because with this amount of gas storage compared to the other magazine on the 2011 and even the Glocks, you don't have as much gas to back you up. So you'll get 13 shots out of this mag on a full charge, no worries, as long as there's no extra air and other in air quotes there, gases inside it. So make sure you purge it. To remove the fill valve, or to even access the fill valve on these, and I do have both types of magazines here, so you can see the one here, this is the one with the extended base and this is the standard base. They both function exactly the same, it's just a little bit longer in the base. But to get to the fill valve on either of these, you have to remove these two pins, and they do come out very, very easily. So if you use a pin punch, you shouldn't need a hammer. You can just push those through and that base plate will come off and it'll take the spring with it. And then from that point you just use a standard valve tool, but it's not something you need to get to frequently. If you do need one replaced and you're not comfortable with pushing pins out of magazines and things like that, come in and see us, we can help you out there. So other than that, we're just doing our general maintenance, making sure that everything looks nice, clean, there's no build up in there. Look for stress marks on your mag lips. That can be an indicator that you've dropped a magazine and you're going to have a failing mag lip. Now a stress mark will come up as a white line on the back plastic, and that's from when it's been bent and it now has a stress point in it. Once it gets that stress point in it, it's the beginning of the end. You may be able to heat it up and straighten that mag lip, but it's never going to be right again, and it's only going to get worse from that point. So if you do damage some mag lips, it's time to start hunting for new ones. Alright, so with that said, we'll pop the camera back up on top, and that will do us for this tech video. So that's the basic maintenance requirements for your WeTech 1911 gas blowback pistol to help your pistol keep running in optimal shape for the life of its use. Now, if you don't want to do the maintenance yourself, we do have pistol maintenance cards available. $45 for 5 services. It's less than $10 a service to get us to pull it apart, go through it, identify any areas of wear, let you know what's going on, re-lubricate it and get you back on the field. We've got 20 different 1911s in stock. We've got over 55 WeTech gas blowbacks in stock. It's never been a better time to get into gas blowback pistols, or if you're already a gas blowback pistol fiend like I am, it's never been a better time to add to your collection. With that said, if there's something I haven't addressed in this video, get in touch with us. We've got Steve and Bo down at Yatla, Raven at Mount Gravatt, and myself at G-Bum. Give us a call, jump on Facebook, get on Discord, get in touch, come in and have a chat. We're always here. With that said, I'm Odin, this is Tactical Edge Hobbies Custom Shop, Tuesday Tech Talk, and I will see you next week.